There is a moment in almost every person's financial life that seems insignificant at the time, almost too small to notice, yet it quietly sets the direction of everything that comes after it. And it rarely looks dramatic or obvious. It usually looks like a simple decision, repeated without thought. Something as ordinary as a small daily purchase, a minor convenience, or a habit that feels harmless because the amount involved is so low that the brain refuses to treat it as important. And yet, over time, this is exactly where financial trajectories are shaped. To understand this, imagine a $10 habit. Not because $10 is a large or small amount in absolute terms, but because it sits in that psychological space where spending feels emotionally weightless. It is the price of lunch, a ride, a streaming subscription, impulse items at a store, or small daily comforts that do not require justification. And because it feels insignificant, it bypasses the deeper part of decision-making that usually evaluates long-term consequences. The human brain is not naturally designed to track financial accumulation over long periods. It is designed for immediate feedback, immediate reward, and immediate relief, which means that when a small expense produces comfort or convenience now, the mind prioritizes that outcome over abstract future outcomes that feel distant and uncertain. And this is where the $10 habit begins to form its influence, not through a single decision, but through repetition without reflection. If a person spends $10 a day on something non-essential, it does not feel structurally important in the moment, because the brain evaluates it as a single unit, one decision, one transaction, one moment. But financial systems do not operate on isolated moments. They operate on accumulation, and accumulation does not require large inputs to become significant. It only requires consistency. Over a single week, that $10 habit becomes $70. Over a month, it becomes roughly $300. And over a year, it approaches $3,650, which is not just a number, but a representation of alternative paths that were not taken. Because in financial systems, every repeated expense is also an opportunity cost, meaning the same money could have been stored, invested, or redirected into something that compounds over time. But the psychological framing of "it's just $10" prevents the brain from seeing the cumulative structure. What makes this even more powerful is that the $10 habit rarely exists alone. It tends to sit inside a network of similar decisions, small conveniences stacked on top of each other, each one justified independently, each one rationalized as harmless. And because they are not evaluated together, they do not feel like a system, but they function like one. At the same time, there is another layer operating beneath the surface, which is how identity forms around financial behavior. Because people do not just repeat actions, they begin to see those actions as normal, and what feels normal begins to define what feels possible. So someone who consistently spends small amounts without tracking them does not just develop a spending pattern, they develop a financial identity centered around immediacy rather than accumulation. To understand why this matters, it helps to step into the structure of how wealth actually forms over time. Because wealth is less about isolated income events and more about retained value, meaning what remains after consumption. And what remains can be directed into systems that grow through time, whether through saving mechanisms, investment structures, or asset-building behaviors, all of which depend not on large one-time actions, but on consistent retention of small amounts. Now consider what happens when the $10 habit is redirected instead of spent, not in a dramatic or unrealistic way, but in a simple structural shift where the same $10 is treated not as an expense, but as stored value, because even small retained amounts begin to interact with time, and time introduces compounding, which is one of the few financial forces that does not require additional effort once activated. Compounding is often misunderstood as something that only matters with large sums, but mathematically it behaves the same regardless of scale. The difference is only in speed of visible results, not in structure. And this is where behavior becomes more important than amount, because consistency over time creates outcomes that intensity cannot replicate. However, most people do not experience compounding in practice because the $10 habit prevents it from ever starting, not because the amount is too small to matter, but because the pattern of continuous outflow interrupts the accumulation process before it can stabilize. And without stabilization, growth has nothing to build upon. This is where behavioral economics becomes important, because it shows that financial decisions are rarely purely rational. They are influenced by friction, convenience, environment, and emotional state, which means that the $10 habit is not a financial decision at all, but a behavioral default triggered by context, such as being tired, stressed, busy, or simply exposed to an easy purchasing environment. In this sense, the $10 habit is not a flaw in intelligence or discipline, but a predictable response to design, because modern financial environments are structured around reducing resistance to spending, making small transactions feel almost invisible. And when spending becomes frictionless, awareness becomes the only real control mechanism. Awareness, however, is not constant for most people, which is why financial outcomes often diverge not because of knowledge differences, but because of repeated unconscious patterns, and over long periods, unconscious patterns dominate conscious intentions. If we zoom out further, we begin to see that the real effect of the $10 habit is not the money itself, but the timeline it creates. Because every repeated expense does not just reduce current value, it also reduces future optionality. And optionality is one of the most important but least visible components of financial stability. Optionality means having choices, and choices require accumulated resources, and accumulated resources require retention over time. So when small habits consistently reduce retention, they also quietly reduce future flexibility, even if income remains stable or increases. This is why many people experience a paradox where earning more does not necessarily create financial stability, because if spending patterns scale alongside income without structural change, the underlying system remains the same, and the $10 habit simply becomes a $20 or $50 habit, maintaining the same proportionate effect. At this point, it becomes clear that the issue is not the number itself, but the absence of a conscious system that governs small decisions. Because without a system, small decisions default to convenience, and convenience consistently favors immediate consumption over delayed accumulation. Yet the solution is not extreme restriction, nor is it deprivation, but awareness of pattern design. Because once the $10 habit is visible as a system rather than an isolated action, it can be redirected intentionally, and even partial redirection changes long-term outcomes significantly. For example, redirecting even a portion of repeated small expenses into stored value creates a structural split between consumption and accumulation, and this split is what allows financial growth to begin forming in parallel with daily life rather than in opposition to it. Over time, this creates a shift in identity, where the individual no longer sees money only as something to be spent in small increments, but also as something that can accumulate silently in the background. And this dual awareness is often the beginning of long-term financial stability. What makes this transformation subtle is that nothing about daily life needs to change dramatically for the effects to emerge, because the power of the $10 habit lies in its invisibility, and once visibility is restored, control becomes possible without force. In the end, the $10 habit is not really about $10. It is about the structure of repetition, the psychology of immediacy, and the long-term consequences of small decisions that feel too minor to matter in isolation, but become meaningful when viewed across time. And once this structure is understood, financial outcomes become less about sudden change and more about consistent direction.